Let's have some fun playing with a couple of words. I am Joseph. This is Input English. For those of you joining us for the first time, Input English is a channel created to provide comprehensible input for people around the world who want to improve their ability to understand spoken English and for people to improve their speaking ability. Comprehensible input is arguably the best way to learn the English language. This channel also has a lot of videos on how to use comprehensible input, so if you're not familiar with how it works, we have videos on that subject. So let's get started on today's subject. Let's play with some words. The word that I'd like to start with is practice. As you probably know, practice could be a noun, that is a thing, a concept, a behavior, or it could be an action. So someone might say to you that they were going to practice the piano. A lawyer has a law practice. A doctor practices medicine. So when someone does a practice, what that usually means is that they are doing something, but they're doing it in a repetitious or habitual way. It may be part of a ritual. The collection of these activities can be called the practice. This is a very versatile word that has subtly different meanings depending upon the context. It can be used in a religious setting. Religious figures can have practices demonstrating their devotion, reading religious materials, or praying. People may have a meditation practice. The obvious thing that comes to mind quickly is we can practice a musical instrument. We can try to develop skills on our musical instrument. Ideally, athletes practice their sporting activities to improve their skills. Of course, for us, people think in terms of practicing speaking, practicing the use of the language. And speaking certainly is important. So where am I going with this? What I'd like to talk about is a specific practice that I have found very useful. This practice developed in me gradually out of need. This practice is called journaling. Now, this is not something I did decades ago. This is relatively new over the past couple of years. Decades ago, I just tried to keep everything in my head, just do everything mentally, and not render anything in writing. I didn't try to memorialize my thoughts. I just thought them. And the trouble with that is those thoughts would come and go, and a lot of times things just didn't get done. They didn't get acted upon. I would think of a great idea, and then it would just evaporate. It would just disappear, and a lot of time would pass, and looking back, there were a lot of missed opportunities because I didn't put anything down. I didn't write anything down. Years ago, I would have construed that journaling is for the self-absorbed. It's for people very focused on themselves, and they're doing it because of their self-absorption. Well, what that tells me now, looking back, is I simply didn't understand journaling, because it is not for the self-observed, it is for the thoughtful. I have some journals in the house that I've made some notes in over the years, but nothing really became a great habit until fairly recently. In another video, I showcased a book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way, and with that book, she helps people avoid writer's block. She works with people writing novels, short stories, screenplays, etc., who find themselves staring at a blank page and have no idea how to get the story out of here and onto there. She recommended what she called morning pages. I adopted that practice. That is, I developed a habit of getting up each morning, and after coffee and perhaps some breakfast, I sit down at a desk and write 3 pages in longhand. The first few times I tried it, I had no idea how to do it. It was a new practice for me, and I needed to develop some skills and some understanding on how to do this. But that came quickly. I discovered that for me, a spiral notebook was a terrible idea because I didn't like the feel of the spiral binding under my hand when I was trying to write on the left side of the notebook. So I needed to deal with that. No spiral notebooks. I don't want them for this purpose. They have their uses. The other thing I found is that I didn't enjoy writing with a pencil or a cheap ballpoint pen. It just didn't have a good feel to it. I didn't enjoy it. It seemed like work. It reminded me of all the schoolwork I did over the years. It just seemed like drudgery. But I remembered that I had a nice ballpoint pen, and it didn't take me long to find it. It needed to be cleaned, but that was easy, and new ink was applied. I found that writing morning pages with a ballpoint pen was wonderful because as the letters come off the nib of the pen, the ink glistens in the light and then dries before your eyes. With this pen I was using, it was about a 2 or 3 second latency between the ink coming off the pen as a liquid and then it dries to its final appearance. It was wonderful to see the words flow out of the pen and onto the page. After a few false starts, I wound up with a good habit of writing morning pages every day. I learned that morning pages are not the way to develop scripts for videos. I didn't want to pervert the activity of writing my morning pages into work. I wanted to keep it as an exercise for my own benefit, and I would prefer to sketch out ideas for videos as a separate event. That said, a lot of ideas came out while I was writing my morning pages. They were quickly rendered in another list so I could make a coherent, good video for you. Over the weeks of doing this new practice, I developed a lot more confidence and a lot more interest in doing it. It was not a chore. It was a fun experience. As time passed, I thought about this process and realized that Julia Cameron had a very specific purpose for her morning pages. That is, she was fighting the dreaded writer's block. She didn't want people to have writer's block, and this was a tool to overcome writer's block. But I thought, there's more to it than that. There's really more available to us if you think about it. So I have evolved my journaling practice from just writing morning pages, that is a stream of consciousness of the things I'm thinking about, just ideas. And to that stream of consciousness, I've added 2 additional modules. Now, I don't do everything every morning. There is some flexibility in this practice. And so one morning I may be mostly stream of consciousness, and other mornings I may be working on one of the other 2 modules. So what are the other 2 modules? The first one you could call FAT, F-A-T, for fears, avoidances, and traumas. So this module is about emotional things. Things you don't like, things that bother you, things you need to get off your chest. That expression, get something off your chest, is used commonly for people who are upset with something and they need to discard it. They need to get it out of them. And so they speak about it or write about it and get it off their chest. The other module I remember by calling it IF, but it's spelled IPH, ideas, plans, and hopes. So instead of getting something off my chest, I'm imagining what could be, new ideas, sketching out plans for things I might want to do. Now, the cool thing about sketching out plans in your journal is you don't have to act upon them. You can just put them on paper and they could get picked up later as an idea that you develop, or they could be discarded because you realize they're completely impractical or inappropriate. They are in your journal, so they can't hurt anybody. So how do you do this? If you wanted to start journaling, how would you do it? The short answer is you just start doing it. There is no ready, there is no preparation. You just start journaling, just start writing things down. Now, there are some things you might want to do for your own enjoyment. I told you that I did not like the spiral bindings because I didn't like the feel of it when it was under my hand writing on the left page. So I sourced a notebook, a journal, that is bound and is comfortable, so I can easily write on the right side or the left side. The next thing you might consider is a nice writing implement. Now, this is where personal choice rules. If you like writing with a pencil, then you should write with a pencil. If you want to write with a very inexpensive, simple ballpoint pen, so be it. It's not my business to tell you what you have to do. But one of the best things I did for my journaling practice was to get actually a couple of fountain pens. I have two older fountain pens that I bought when I was on the faculty of the university. That was back when I thought that it was important to look the part. And so I was proud to have that pen in my pocket, conspicuous enough that people might notice it. Looking back, I cringe at that shallow behavior, putting an emphasis on an object as opposed to one's own worth. But that was then, and this is now. There are some fun fountain pens that are on the market, and the good news is they're not very expensive. You can spend thousands of dollars on fine fountain pens. I'm not advocating that. I'm not trying to get you to spend a lot of money. Now, one of my favorite fountain pens is a Lamy Safari. It's made out of plastic. The nib is made out of steel. It is a wonderful writing experience. They are very well made and they look nice. So because they're inexpensive, I have a couple of Lamy Safaris in various colors. A Lamy Safari is not a status symbol. It's a nice writing implement. And the reason I bought it is for the experience of writing in my journal. Another fun pen is the Kaweco Brass Sport. This is a very small pen. They're not very expensive. They write extremely well. And I particularly enjoy using that little pen. It just has a nice look in the hand, and the nib is very smooth on the page. It's very nice. These inexpensive pens that I've talked about have increased the likelihood that I will remember to journal and enjoy journaling and not turn it into a drudgery. How much do you have to write? As much as you want. There are some people whose journaling practice is to write one sentence a day. That is a journaling practice. For me, it's not enough because there are a lot of thoughts racing through my head, and I would like to put them on paper. Some people set a timer. They have to write for 15 minutes. I find that irritating. I would not want to do that. It would remind me of when I was a child and I was required to practice the piano 30 minutes a day or else. So I don't want to set a timer. I don't want an electronic device controlling my behavior. What has worked well for me is 3 pages. It's enough to develop some thoughts. It's not enough that it takes a huge block of time. My best approach to this has been just knocking out 3 pages a day. Do you go back and reread what you wrote? Well, if you listen to Julia Cameron, you do not. The benefit to you is to get it on the page. Other people do go back and reread their journals from the past. They keep them and refer back to them. Still, other people have elaborate systems for referencing what was written. I have seen people describe marks that they put in the margin so that they can go back and find different types of entries for future reference. At the moment, I don't plan on doing that. It sounds like they're turning this process into work, and I don't choose to do that at this point. To each his own. If they want to do that, that's fine. The one thing that Julia Cameron said in her book that I really agree with is don't show your journal to other people. You can if you want, but I would prefer to keep my thoughts private, confidential, and not have any feelings that I need to edit my thoughts as I put them down, lest someone see what I wrote later. I think keeping a journal private is prudent. In the context of language learning, I've found this to be useful. I'm not writing my journal entries in Spanish yet, although I have put some words and phrases in. I have salted some Spanish in. I have thought of having journal entries in Spanish. It would certainly be a reasonable thing to do. I just haven't gotten that far. I do find that journaling helps me stay focused and maintain my priority for continuing to learn Spanish to a higher and higher level. I invite comments below, and if you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.